since this month shop update is all about bringing back the Allmoge colors, Albert, I thought it would be really fun to make a project centered around the Allmoge and especially the inspiration that started the Allmoge collection in the first place, which is houses. So I sort of wanted to combine using the colors but then also creating something that would represent the collection as a whole, and of course that would be a house. And I really wanted to make something a little bit different, so this time instead of just creating a painting, I decided to venture out into the world of 3D, other known as just normal world, and make sort of a vignette. I'm very inspired by Tim Holtz and I love a lot of his stuff, but I'm a very 2D type of person and I really want to explore my creativity and see where it takes me if I start using more layers. And I have done a few pieces where I have layered, but this time it's to a new level. So the base that I'm using, it is a set of drawers or boxes from Flying Tiger of Copenhagen, and then I'm also using watercolor paper, there are arches, and I'm also using Tiny Lights by Tim Holtz. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the project. I'm going to talk you through the steps, and yeah, I hope you like it. So the first thing that I actually did was I went to Photoshop and I planned out how I wanted sort of how the vignette little box were supposed to look like, and I did that so I can make all of the elements into different shapes that I could cut out of the watercolor paper. I knew that I wanted some of the things quite detailed, especially the house with all the windows, and you know, I wanted that to be the focal point. So I did that and I cut it out. I had a little bit of issues, so it's not perfectly cut out, which will become apparent soon. But for now it's good enough. I can peel it off, but I'm going to leave it on the mat and I'm just going to go over with the first layer of watercolor. And this is very easy, making sure that all the pieces are going to stay put. They're not going to curl up. I'm working in very small sections and I'm not using a lot of water, and it's also sticking to the mat, so it is minimal buckling here. And I'm just trying to use the different colors that I have in this set. So the Allmoge set has 8 colors and there are 2 browns. We have one true blue, an ultramarine blue, one that is Disa that has a white base, and we have a green that is Gustav, a yellow Victoria which is a yellow ochre. We also have a red ochre that is Tekla that I've used on the roof here, and I'm also using Gustav here, the green one, to add in sort of that mossy old effect. And then the sort of star of the show, the color that started it all, that got the name Marie, and that is the red iron oxide PR101. And that in Sweden is called Falu rödfärg, so Falu is a place in Sweden. And this red you can see pretty much everywhere, especially from not so much like in the south of Sweden, but all over the rest of Sweden. You can find houses, cottages and everything painted with this red color, and then white trim around the windows and doors and all of that. So I wanted to capture this sort of very traditional Allmoge palette in watercolor form, and now I want to try to make it into like a little piece that I can look at. So I made this template, if you will, on the computer, and I'm trying to stick to that, but like I said in the beginning, 3D is not my strong suit, and I think of this as testing out to see how it goes. So while that is waiting, I'm going to use the watercolor paper and just make like a back scene. The wood box I decided to leave as it is. I feel like it fits the Allmoge theme, and I don't want to do anything with it on the outside. I want to keep it as a frame, sort of. But on the back side, I want it to be more like the cottage is sitting in a woodsy area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to freehand draw some trees, which is pretty easy. You just make lines You make lines and then you draw some green on top of it, and I mean, you're not going to see this. This is not going to be the focus. It doesn't need to be sharp or anything, because it's just going to give the illusion, the feeling that the house has space behind it, that the scene are continuing on beyond the house. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm working quite wet into wet. And I did decide to go a little bit darker than I thought in the beginning, and I feel like that is also something I'm working on, that to really play with the contrasts, not just in painting but also in different things. So here I'm really trying to challenge myself. So I'm pretty happy with that, and here I have like the front piece that the house will be sitting on, and just sort of comparing so that I know sort of where the scene will be cut off. But because it is a 3D object, which I'm not really used to, you are going to see a little bit, depending on how you tilt the box, going to see a little bit behind it. So I can't just abruptly stop it where that sort of grassy hill is. So I need to make sure they sort of continuing on a little bit, so it wasn't just going to be like a white strip. So when my painting is dry and everything, I'm going to dismount it from the cutting mat, and on the whole it worked pretty fine. I could just push it out, but when it came to the house, there was a little bit more fragile. I ripped it. The big rip is not as noticeable because I could sort of glue that together, but the sort of lines in the windows did rip, and they were just too thin for me to fix it in a good way. So that is something that if I could do it again, I would think about before I cut it out, and sort of how big, because I want them very, very small, very delicate, but this was too delicate. So yeah. So as a finishing layer, I'm going to use some color pencils. I love adding color pencils to watercolor. I feel like you get a really nice effect with that. So I'm just using a selection of Faber-Castell Polychromos because I like them. So I'm just using them to add in some depth and also some texture. I think it's really fun adding color pencil to watercolor paper because you already have that texture, and you can really emphasize it with the color pencil depending on how you're shading and how you hold the pen. And because the Faber-Castell is a little bit harder in the lead, you can go in and add a detail here without the paper sort of eating up your pen. So I feel like if you like adding in color pencil elements to your watercolor, then I would highly recommend the Faber-Castell, because they are a little bit harder if you want to add in details. I like it to add in, like, you know, blades of grass or fur on animals, and I know that many use Prismacolors and Derwent, but they are a little bit softer, and the Faber-Castell, make sure you get a little bit of that you get that detail, even though this is cold pressed paper, so it has texture. So that is just from a non-color pencil working artist that use color pencils. Take it for what it's worth, you know. So I'm using that to sort of bring more oomph to the piece and give it another layer. And I'm also using that a little bit to the background just to add in some depth. Now, the thing that I've been waiting for, the whole thing is about the house. So I want to light up the house using the Tiny Lights by Tim Holtz, and to make that sort of sheen, or like that the light is sort of glowing from within the house, I'm going to first adhere a sheet of thicker vellum to it, because I don't want to see like the light strands behind the windows. I just want it to be a light. So I have the vellum here just to sort of diffuse the light, and here we have it. So the Tim Holtz comes in two varieties, and look at that, isn't that so cool? Okay, so the Tim Holtz Tiny Lights comes in two varieties, and I got the traditional just white light. I did get the Christmas version first, that is red, green and blue, yeah. But second time lucky. So like I said, I wanted to keep the box as it is, so I just drilled a hole. We are going to thread in the light through there later, and I'm just going to use a gel matte medium and coat the inside and the outside of the box so that I keep the texture, I'm keeping the color, but I'm sort of having a secure blanket, sort of like a little coat. So I'm just going to do that, and that goes really quickly to dry. So now we are going to assemble the whole thing, and I'm very, very excited. There's so much planning and preparation has come to this, and I'm at this point a little bit nervous because I want it to go well and I have big hopes for it. So I knew that the plan that I had didn't really work. So at last minute, when I was sitting at the computer, I realized I needed to have like the side of the house. Once again, I'm not usually working in 3D, so I needed to fix this. And I realized you will be able to see the side of the house, not just the front of the house. So quick thinking, and I'm going to try and fix it. I'm also realizing when I'm going to assemble this that I need something to create the distance between the different elements that I hadn't thought of either how I was going to do that. Now, not to brag or anything, but I have a pretty long history when it comes to scrapbooking, crafting, card making, and all of that. So I'm pretty good. But yeah, I definitely needed to think a few times before and redo a few times, but that's okay, we can do that. So I'm taking the paper and I'm folding it to create little gaps to make sure that the elements are securely in place, but also that we have that distance to make sure. So first, here with a house, I want to have like a little pocket almost for me to tuck in the light, because I only want the lights in the house because the light, going to shine up the house. So I have that, and I'm just making sure that I have that white space of this paper, but I'm cutting out like a little niche for the door so I don't see the sort of structural elements behind the door. So we're going to glue that in place, and that turned out really good. Like that decision was a good decision. You might guess what I'm going to say. My other decisions were what type. But yeah, so a little bit of like thinking on the spot, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is going to work. I decided to go with hot glue because I needed something to make sure like it's securely in place, it's watercolor paper, and that it sticks kind of quickly. Now, is this like when we're talking about safety in terms of archivalness and all of that, it's not the best choice, but I don't think this is something I want to save for my future museum, so it's fine. So I'm just making sure that is all tucked up, and here you can see it's sort of creating that pocket where I can slip in the light later on, and that will be held in place. And now I'm thinking like, okay, but how I'm going to make it feel like a 3D house? That is a good question. So I put this side of the house on, and I'm realizing that it looks good from the front, but you get a really awkward gap from the roof to the side of the house, and it gets really big. Now, if I had planned it a little bit better, I think it could be really cool having that wide house like on the hill, but the hill is not 3D. The hill is just painted to look like it's 3D. So if I were to put all of the elements that I had on top of each other, just like one on top of the other, it would look really cool. But that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to create even more depth with actual 3D objects. And I realized that was my big mistake here, that I should have planned the hill in a different way, but we live and learn. So so here you can see I'm making this sort of distanced panel for the hill too, so I'm gluing that to the back piece that I painted, and then again, and I made the same form of little pocket, so folded the paper in sort of a U shape, and that will make sure it stands out from the background. And if I had wanted to make this more like a sunset, you can imagine that would be really nice to put the lights in this little pocket and then having like the sunset, or it would glow from underneath there. That would be really cool. And there's plenty of space, so it comes out. And these boxes that I get from Flying Tiger it was like a pack of, I don't know, 6 or 7 wooden boxes like stacked into each other, so they got smaller or bigger depending on how you look at it. And they're quite wide or deep, so that's really nice, so you can get that. To add to the stability here, because, you know, a little bit of stability, I'm just doing the same fold, simple U shape paper, and just gluing one end to the background and one to the hill. So you can see, very, very easy. I'm just folding it here, trying to make the same distance. I think I made like a centimeter just to get that, making it very, very easy, very unprofessional. I don't know how 3D paper artists fold their paper to create distance, but this is how I do it. So with that, I feel like, yeah, I mean, it's coming along quite nicely. I mean, it's not quite as secure, but yeah, I feel like it's not going to be a lot of people going and like pressing on the hill, so I'm feeling I'm fine. And here you can see the house that has dried. We have it sort of like a pocket. You can see a little bit on the side of the house, and you get that effect. Now, yeah, I wish I could have done it a little bit differently, but for a first time, I feel like it's not too bad. And then starting to play with how I'm going to add the different elements. I did not get to incorporate the smoke from the house because I didn't follow the sketch properly. So when it came time to place that, I had placed the house too high up in the box. But I feel like that is also something you need to consider when you're doing this. Like, it's great to plan out, and I saved a lot of time and energy doing that because I knew these are the pieces, they're going in these places, but also having a little bit of freedom, moving about, and just like, this is where I want it, or no, I don't want it there. I don't like it when it's actually placed like that. So yeah, I think it's good to have that sort of choice or the flexibility when you're doing a bit more structured project. So what I didn't talk about, what just happened now, is that I took a cardboard and just cut them into little squares and glued those together, and I got some really good height on that. So the birch tree that is going to be in the foreground, I'm going to place that, and then I'm going to glue it down. Yep, we're doing it. We are committing. There is no turning back now. And here you can see it just sort of falls in line here. Yeah. Yeah, it's done. You can't go back now. Okay, so the next step is what I've been really excited about, because when I had this project in my mind it took me a few weeks to actually do this project. And for me, it was all about the house with the vellum over the windows, and then the tiny lights that was going to bring this whole project together. That was all about having that house light up. So adding the tiny lights is pretty cool. I have seen many other using tiny lights in their projects, and at first I was like, there's no way I'm going to do a project with like LED lights. That is just insane. But now when I have done it, I love it. I totally do. I still feel like doing it with a card is a little bit excessive. But a thing like this little vignette box or a little display thing, I really love it. So yeah. So I just threaded that through the hole that I drilled, and then I sort of twirled it up so I could hide it behind the house. And do you need this amount of lights? No. I mean, I could have cut it off, but I felt like I could just keep it. I mean, it's just easier to do that. So yeah, and then you can see here the little pocket. You just Oops. You know, it's super easy. Yeah, but you just put that in there, and you can only see that tiny little bit of that little cord, but we're going to fix that later. So in the end, from like the inside of the box, you can't tell that there is anything there. It's just when you look on this side where it's drilled. Now, once again, I could have drilled the hole on the back side, so when you have it displayed, you can't see anything. But I just felt like it would be like easier to do it where I don't have to go through any other layer. Like, I could have planned that better. Once again, I could have planned that so that the hole was just behind the house, and that you could sort of drill it through the background. But once again, we're learning here. So yeah, putting down the path, and here is where I'm talking about that the house and the tree and the background, it all feels very 3D, like very, and then I feel like the path just feels very flat compared to the rest of the elements, and I wished I had thought of making the hill a little bit more rounded, maybe. I'm not sure, but something, or maybe bringing the path out onto the box, like on the floor of the box maybe. But yeah, so I have that, and I also cut out these little edgings with, that is just like a little bit of a higher grass to get it a little bit more, you know, layers. And I also have cut out these little tufts of grass, and I think this is one of the things I could have done better too. So it's not as much of a tutorial as I wish I could have done it better. But yeah, so I put down a few of these, but I think it would be very cool to have done it more. Either to have done bigger pieces or done like a whole sort of garden, maybe. I don't know if that is overkill with the house, but I just feel like there's a lot of empty space in front of the house, so maybe I could have done something more. I'm just adding a little bit of glue to keep the battery pack on the back side, to keep it safe. And I'm using another piece of a bush, and this will cover up that little bit of core that we can still see. So that is something that I hadn't planned on before, but something I could fix when I was seeing it happening, sort of. And I'm using the rest of that bush that I had cut up to do that, and I'm just placing that on the other side to get it a little bit more green. Now, speaking of green, I felt like there was something missing. We need a little bit more, and we need some sparkle here. So on the greens, I'm adding Spira. That is a metallic watercolor that I have, and it's actually in the shop right now. And I just wanted to add a little bit more excitement to the piece. I'm adding that to the bushes and to the grass, and here you can see more of that sort of 3D effect of it. And I just feel like the finished piece is very nice. So yeah, here is the finished piece, my first proper paper 3D vignette. And I am so, and here you can see it on the doors where the paper was too thin when it was cut out. But I'm on the whole, I know I have mentioned all the stuff I wasn't happy with, but I am very happy with it on the whole. I think it looks so cute and so very pretty, and it really it really speaks about the Allmoge the way I see it. So I'm so happy to have that sort of represent the collection that I have made. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with it. I'm very proud, and I can't wait to do this again. And I hope you have enjoyed this process coming along with me. And yeah, I hope you have a really, really great day. Bye bye.